Good morning, all. Welcome to the latest episode of the Turn It Round the Corner podcast. Episode 24 is with another gentleman, stateside, someone that I knew growing up, someone that I went to school with. So, Mark Nash, how you doing,
I'm doing good, thanks, Christian. Great to hear from you.
mate? So, you currently reside East Coast. Tell me where you live, tell me what you're doing, and then let's dig into your football journey stateside.
Yes, no, I live about an hour outside Manhattan, on Long Island. So I've been here over 20 years now, and I've got two children. They're up at Cortland University, upstate New York. I currently am the girls' director of coaching for the Stony Brook-LGN Soccer Club. We have about 2,000 kids in the program. So again, kids from like five, actually younger than that, 3 years old up to about 19. And I also work at Malloy Women's Soccer. That's a Division 2 university, which is based out of Rockville Centre, which again is close to Manhattan. So part of my other role, or the other hat I wear, is going out recruiting for college. And a lot comes with that, Christian, the financial side of it, most importantly, the educational side of it. And, you bring in sort of a lot of the scouting side of it as well. So it's I was going to say it's seasonal, but I mean, you pretty much go from the beginning of August every single year, and you're probably working anything between 12 to 15-hour days, a little bit of respite in the winter, and then the spring up to about the end of June is pretty much the same. So July generally tends to be a quieter month, but it's very active. It's certainly an evolving and ever-changing industry. That's what it is here. There's a lot of soccer is very business based here, but hopefully as time goes on, we'll start getting the right things in place, and the US can certainly, on the men's side, catch up to where the women have done so well.
Sure. So there's a lot to dig into there. So obviously, having played in the US myself, and as prior conversations with you, really still interested in college sport and American soccer, whether that be USL or the MLS. So let's dig into your role at Malloy. So Malloy, you're saying, is a Division 2 college. Talk to me about their soccer program.
Yes, so we currently play in the ECC. So in the US, there's lots of these different conferences. Most of them are geographical. So for us, our furthest games away are upstate New York. So we may travel up to Buffalo, Rochester. So those that don't know the sort of the American geography, that's right up on the Canadian border. We travel down south, probably Philadelphia is probably the furthest south we go. So that's normally about 3.5 hours outside of New York. And effectively, what you have to do each season is qualify through your conference. Then you get into the NCAA finals. If you get into that, again, you start to obviously play colleges and institutions further and further afield. And then hopefully one day get to a national final. That's probably a little bit hard for us. We're a private Catholic school. We have about 5,000 students. Most of them do live on campus, but we mainly recruit probably from about a 50-mile radius around our institution. Now, that said, we do try to go further afield. We do a lot of recruiting, a lot of scouting at competitions all over the country. So, it's certainly for us. I mean, our program has done sort of exceptionally well the last sort of 4 or 5 years. We've won the last four conferences out of the last five. And managed to get to the NCAAs, obviously, on those four occasions. So, for the size of our institution, We've done exceptionally well. I do work, ironically enough, with a couple of other English guys. So again, we all have different backgrounds, whether it be playing and the people we know. But we've all been in the States a long time, and we are obviously a little bit older and wiser. So I think we do quite a good job there. But we enjoy the college side of it. It's again doing the side of coaching that we don't get in youth soccer. Like there's a lot of video analysis. There's the training, the periodization, the meso, micro, and macro cycles of coaching. A lot more about the welfare of the player and ensuring, most importantly, that they understand that they're student athletes and that obviously their performances in the classroom supersedes their performances on the soccer field. And if we give them a good 4 years in college and they come out, they've had a good experience and hopefully won some championship rings on the way, then I think we've done a good job. But it certainly is different to anything we do in England at the moment.
So Nashy, looking at your roster and looking at the players on that, and I think you've just mentioned that. Why is that you just recruit locally? Is that a financial thing? Is that a school sort of policy where you're recruiting more local players rather than because I say always college sport has always been, especially soccer, pretty much a varied squad, especially of boys and girls from the UK. Looking at your current rosters, I say they all look like they're very very close to your campus. They're all American citizens. What is that? Why is that for your school? Is that just a monetary thing?
No, it's a really good question. So yes, I mean, as most people probably know, education works a lot differently than in the UK. So we we basically go, Christian, for like I guess higher level students. So those that have got very high grades, GPAs,
Yeah,
SATs. So we're probably going for a smaller market in that respect. Our acceptance rate is maybe smaller than some of the surrounding schools. And again, there is the financial aspect. So again, if you're a high performing student, there's a good chance you get a big chunk of your recruitment subsidized by academic money.
yeah,
Now, we as an institution, we do give athletic money, but unlike Division One schools, which now have to give, I believe, full scholarships to student athletes, we don't do that. So we, I guess, we're very big into nursing, and I think what we do is we give not only if you come out of Malloy University, it's a really good degree to have. I think we're just very good at attracting good talent in our area that wants to stay somewhat local. I think the variation of children that we get to see, and I'm working with them all the time, Christian. They want to go down south to Florida, the sun's
yeah.
shining. If you look at the the campus at Tampa, when you're off, you're on the sunbed and enjoying yourself. So I guess we fit a certain profile, and we do get a lot of interest locally as well. So again, our recruiting budget isn't massive. So most of our recruiting is done when we're out with our club teams as well, where
Yeah.
other institutions they may fundraise to I know travel and do a little bit more recruiting. But myself and the other coaches I work with, we generally try to recruit when we're at events. So I think there's a multitude of different reasons there, Christian. But as I said, we've got something right because we're getting the right kids in to our program. Now, can we look to change that? I think we'd like to. I think we've always said we'd like to get more of an international presence. And there's a little bit of controversy about that whole international thing throughout college soccer at the moment. So, there's lots of things that we're juggling there, but I think we've done pretty well with what we got.
So I've always, if you've listened to the podcast, I've had a couple of college students from the US on. I've always tried to help people get to the US. So if someone was to look at your program, Nashy, in regards to boys or girls sport, what sort of scholarship money would they get? Would that, obviously you said you don't get a full ride, but percentage wise, ballpark, what would they be able to get towards their fees if they come and played, at Malloy?
Well, I think again, Christian, it all comes into what they've got on paper
Right,
academically. So let's say, for example, schools. I'll just throw a number out to give you an idea. So let's say the school's $50,000 a year. Now that's without any scholarship money. That's without any athletic money. That's without any Dominican aid, financial aid. So let's say it's 50,000. So,
am I?
and again,
Sorry to interrupt, Nashi. Am I right in thinking as well that the school costs, are they still very much cheaper if you're in state? Is that another reason why you get children in state? Do you still get it cheaper? I remember that from Florida days that, to your point, if it was 50 grand, but if you was an in state student, it might be 20 grand to start with, for instance. Is that still the case as well?
Again, depends on what school you're going to. So if you're going to a
Right,
state university, then absolutely. So my
right,
children go to state university. So as we're New York residents or they are New York residents, then yes, they get more consideration for the financial help than those that are not
right,
coming in. For a private school like ourselves, no, you're pretty much set. That's the cost of the school, and then it's really up to you, what you're doing in the classroom. And look, again, for us, and I think every school, so I'm not saying anything that's
yeah,
incorrect here, but we'll get a budget of athletic money every single year.
sure,
And depending, Christian, who's graduating, like last year or this year, we've got one senior graduating.
right,
Last year, we had to bring in 13 freshmen. So each year, the cycle is different, how much money we're going to get back. And then I guess for us, we have to see where we apply that money. So we may say, look, and I know some institutions do this. We need 4 players. We have 20,000 left. Each player is going to get 5,000, regardless if they're a top, middle, or bottom player.
yeah,
And other institutions will say, well, I've got, say, 20,000 to spend this year on scholarships. I want that player because that player is the one that's going to maybe win me a championship and keep me in a job. So I'll give that player 15,000, and maybe I'll split the other 5,000 between the other 3 players. So it's really dependent on what the program needs at that time. And as I said, there's not really a correct answer in any of them, but
right.
we try to sort of weigh each year up and look ahead at least 2 years.
So what are you in right now, Nashy's probably full season? Are they just training, no games at the minute?
Yeah, they finished so they play the full season, and then now they go on to basically a skeleton schedule. So we do have a couple of kids on our soccer team that play lacrosse,
Right,
and they actually almost double up on their scholarship. So they'll well, on their athletic money. So they might be getting money to play soccer and lacrosse because they're 2 separate seasons. But the players that are not doing an additional sport, we have a couple of friendlies lined up, a few games here and there. They do train, but obviously a much more low key level than they would during the season. And yeah, we sort of just want to make sure we keep them moving and keep them fit. And then over the summer, they'll get a summer workout package, a training program, and then come August, they come back earlier than the other students, and
yeah.
we're straight back into it.
So Nashi, looking at your school, you've got baseball, basketball, cross country, lacrosse, soccer, track and field, and sprint football. So they come back in early. I remember, as I say, Florida days, they always come back in earlier than everyone else. And then, so does the season start? Is it August, September? Do they train twice a day? And then they pretty much go up then to Christmas, obviously, depending on whether they get in the NCAA competitions. Is that correct?
Yes, that's pretty much it. And we start again. So as a D2, we probably start mid to late August,
Right.
and we do 2 a days because there's no classes going on. We do
Yeah.
2 a days for about 2 to 3 weeks. And again, Christian, there's a lot of rules in place, as you know, with the NCAAs about the amount of time training that you do. So if you're a D1, you could
Yeah,
be in there the first week of August. For us, we're
sure.
sort of in the middle, and for the D3s, for the most part, they're not starting until right at the end of August. But we normally get about 2 weeks with them where they go morning and afternoon. And as I tell you, as you get older, those days become as a coach, you're struggling under the sun a little bit, but it's good. It gets everyone ready to go, and we have a couple of scrimmages towards the end of the month, and then September. Now every single game counts, even if it's a non-conference games, which is all. I find that concept really interesting.
That's good. And then lastly, for college wise, um, do you see that? Because I've seen it, as I say, I went to America in 2001, and it wasn't really a big thing. Obviously, most of the boys that I knew that played soccer were all English or British, but I wouldn't say it was widespread as it is now. Now I think it's a very much, there's lots of companies doing it. It's a viable option. You come out of an academy at 18 now, rather than dropping down their pyramid or going trialing. You see a lot of boys, even if they've come out of Cat One academies, going over to the US now. So do you think that will continue to grow, or did you say something earlier in this podcast where they're looking at maybe trying to reduce the number of foreign students?
And this is exactly where we are right now, Christian.
Right,
I think you talk to certain people, especially parents of kids that want their kids to play in soccer, and there is a frustration that European kids are coming over and
right.
taking spots on the program versus their kids that are coming through the system here.
Hmm.
And that again, it's a big debate going on now. Is there going to be roster limits on international students? And to your point, are there agencies potentially making money from these kids coming over? I know that's another big thing where
Yeah, there's
people will,
lots. Yeah, there's
yeah, and
lots.
and the problem is, Christian, a lot of them aren't as legitimate as they say. So they'll say to a
No.
parent, listen, you give us a few $1,000, we'll get your kid recruited and we'll write the resume and we'll do this. And ultimately, they'll just grab as many people as they can. And if they get one or two success stories, we'll just use that to grab the next lot of parents. So it's a really, really thin line.
So could you see something where, I suppose, depending on NCAA one, two, and three, could you see it where you may be allowed five, three, you know, seven players on a roster that can be outside of the US? Do you think something like that's around the corner?
You know what? Especially with everything that's going on with the government and the whole change of politics here, I wouldn't put anything off the table.
Right.
Um, I think there's two sides to this, Christian. It's like, for me as a coach, is what do we need to do better to ensure that the kids, whether it's male or female, get first dibs on those colleges? Because maybe we're not doing something right here. Um, but that said, when you bring in, I think, European players and that, at the moment, certainly, does that up the level? Does that make the standard here? So maybe players that come out of college to play in the professional game are more
Mm,
equipped because they're playing from kids that are in, I don't know, say the Brighton Academy or the Tottenham Academy or the Arsenal Academy. There's a lot of people from Germany, Scandinavia. The Scandinavians, the government give them quite a lot of money there to study abroad. So
yeah.
people from Scandinavia have more of a chance of coming over and being funded properly to do it. So there's all these moving parts. So it's going to be interesting how that opens up. But there's certainly now a feeling within soccer that why are we not being able to get our American kids into these programs, and why are we so desperate to get to Europe and maybe take a player that may be better, but they may not.
Yeah, I get that, mate. And then lastly, I'm always intrigued because obviously the change in the landscape to how it was for years and years. How was how was the sort of student athlete compensation? So the NIL program, how was that sort of, has that dribbled down to your school and your level? Have you got students there trying to make some money?
It won't be on our as a D2. That doesn't affect us. It only goes through the only Division One at the moment. And again, the background of that is these colleges, universities made a ton of money off of these, basically American football. There's down at
Oh,
Clemson.
unbelievable.
They
Yeah,
get 90,000 a game, and the
yeah,
players on the field were not seeing a penny of that. So this whole change now is that yes, they can earn money through, naming rights, image rights, likeness, in EA
yeah,
Sports and that. So it's blown the doors open. Now, what's happened in soccer? There's now a roster reduction. So the most I think a D1 can carry is 28. Now, most Premier League teams don't carry what's considered 28 first team players. In the
no,
US, they do. In fact, I would say a lot of rosters, not most, but a lot of rosters supersede 28 players. So, Christian, you played at a good level. As a player, if you were on a roster of 30 plus players, and you may not see the field for 2 or 3 years. Do you know what I mean? So there's
yeah,
so many things going on now, and I think what's going to happen as rosters get cut or players get cut, that'll filter down into D2. So does that now up the level in D2? The kids on D2 rosters now go for D3s. There's a thing called a transfer portal that if you're not
yeah,
going to play, if you look to transfer out, you've got to go in there, then colleges like ourselves will try and find you. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of movement in US soccer. And as I said, or to our point about the controversy, is now with more international students coming in to take those spots, it squeezes the game even harder here.
yeah. I think that's it's a lot of kids in it to playing in one. I know college soccer in the US has always been roll on, roll off subs, and you've been able to get people in and out of games. But to me, 28 kids, unless you're having an A and a B team and you're getting them some soccer, that's I always stand by the old adage that too many players that are not playing becomes a cancer in the dressing room. Too many players that are not, should we say, liking the coach or liking not being out of the team. I think that causes a whole heap of problems, let alone the financial side. So let's put the sort of the college program to bed. Let's talk about club team. So it's Stony Brook-LGN. So you're based Long Island. Um, Talk
Yes,
to me
yep.
about that then, mate. Talk to me about the club and your role there.
Yeah, so I think I said to you earlier, I come into the country in 2003. I mean, I'd always been coaching or doing the coaching over in the England. I mean, you probably know my brother Gary. He was with
Yeah,
Harlow Town Juniors. So I I sort of got involved then because he's obviously a younger team than mine. So I always used to sort of help, put the cones out, try and make myself somewhat useful. So I always found it was something that I enjoyed. And the irony was, as I started to I played a bit of Sunday League. I think me and you played for Paul Denham's team for a year, didn't we? We talked about big
yeah, that's it.
rosters. We were happy to get 11 players some weeks.
Yeah,
Um, and we it was just something that stuck with us. And just as I started the process of moving out here, um, a friend of mine, I'm going to name drop a little bit, called Gavin, which I worked down with in Reading. We worked for an electronics company. Just said, hey, Nashy, why don't we jump on? There's an FA course. You're going out to America. It's like a big thing out there. Why don't you do it? And I was very I was like, maybe, maybe not. Anyway, in the end, I jumped on it, got a couple of licenses. And ironically, this Gavin, the show that everyone's going to know, Gavin and Stacey, was
yeah.
actually based on him. His best friend is James Corden. And
Oh,
I actually sat and watched a West Ham and Arsenal game years ago. At his apartment, when they played there. So Gav was, and he still is one of James's best friend. But he was a guy that I worked with, and yeah, he was the one who sort of pushed me to get the coaching badges. When I come here to the States, started working in the same industry, and an American guy called Tom that I work with, just he said, look, I've been given my daughter's soccer team. He goes, I know soccer, I play, but I haven't really coached. Do you want to come in and train? And that's really where it started. So it began with one girls team. I've never coached girls before, so I was like, what the heck do I do with this? Um, and it took me a little while because they're totally different than boys, right? The whole mindset, the ability to work together, how coachable they are, all the little quirks. But it was something that I really started to enjoy. And I think the first 6 months or a year did pretty well. So the club come back to us and said, hey, do you want to take more of a role here, take more teams? And that was ticking over and quite nicely. So I was doing my job in electronic marketing up to about 2008. I was doing the soccer on the side, and we, as everybody knows, there was a big financial crash in 2008, and the business I was working for pretty much locked the door and said, "Look, we're out of business. The investors have pulled their money, so you've pretty much not got a job." So for me, after sort of pondering for about 2 or 3 months, where do I go next? I've got a young family. I was still earning the money through the soccer. So I went to them and said, look, this is my situation. Can I, potentially roll out some more programs, take a more prominent role? I'm available. This was Stony Brook as a standalone club at the time. And I got a lot of support from the people and the board there, and they again liked what I've been doing so far. So they just said, yeah, run with it. We'll give you a full-time salary. Run camps, run clinics, and that sort of steamrolled that, and did that really for 10 years. Undisturbed. And I think as we were moving forward, and the club, again, we had some good teams, but soccer started to really change. There was a lot more money coming into the game, a lot more training organisations. And again, Christian, I don't know, maybe you tell me a little bit about what goes on in the UK, but all of a sudden, anybody could sort of become a coach. And for me, this is where maybe it grew too quickly that you could, without any real credentials, set up a training company. And all of a sudden we had tons and tons of teams, not enough qualified coaches. All these leagues started popping up left, right, and centre. And there was kids playing on two teams, playing in two leagues, different passes, different philosophies, different ideas. And everything started to go in a different direction. Now, the circuit breaker was obviously COVID, and that slowed everything down for about a year or so.
What what what
And
what
then
what spiked that interest, Nashy? Why did that happen? Why did all of a sudden, everyone sort of grab an interest in soccer? Because I always look at, like, I've lived in America, I've worked for US companies, I've been back and forth a lot over the last 20 years, and I love American sports, but I love baseball and I love American football. Obviously, they're core American sports, right? I always found like the same as Australia, and the leagues kind of mirrored each other. That they would always be fourth or fifth in the queue. In the US, you've got American football, you've got ice hockey, you've got baseball. Like, how what happened? Where was that spike? Is that because of the global game? Is it because of national teams doing better? Like, why did that happen to start with?
um, I mean, the cynic in me says it was definitely money. I
Right,
think it was a really untapped market. Like we on Long Island, there was I sort of, I wish we would go back to this, Christian, but there was one league which was Long Island Junior Soccer League. If
right,
you did well in that, you went up to what was called Northeast Regional Premier. And if you did well there, you went to the Nationals. That was the only pathway from top to bottom. But it was certainly more holistic and it made sense. It was proper promotion relegation. And these other entities just started popping up in places saying, hey, we're running a league as well. And again, there wasn't, I wouldn't say there wasn't oversight. There was the Long Island Junior Soccer League was run by US Youth Soccer, and there was another entity that was more out west called US Club. So they again were like a governing body. So they were doing a league, they were doing things differently. They saw a lot of interest on that side, and then there was other leagues that come in like the ECNL, and there was a development academy, and all of a sudden it just seemed this groundswell, all these different organizations all popped up at once. um, and I think where the money was in some of these other leagues. So there was some excellent marketing. There was a desire to raise the standards. Again, I don't want to be cynical and say it was all about the money, because I do believe there's good people trying to do the right thing in there. But everything become fractured very, very quickly. And as I said, I think something got lost along the way. And what that was, I think, was the welfare and the organic growth of the kids. It just become like a fear of missing out structure. And I think parents were making decisions not necessarily in the best interests of their kids, because um they're not 15 and 16. They're just doing it because they're worried that their neighbors are doing things that they're not. So I think it, again, is a multifaceted answer really, but I just think it was just this groundswell just arrived all at once, and that really changed the game forever, in terms of how players were gonna and teams were going to evolve. It really hurt a lot of the town clubs, and I think that's where we are now, and that's really why after COVID we had to make some changes and evolve as a club.
So how did you evolve? What changes did you make, mate? How did you move forward from that?
So basically, there was a club close to us called LGN, or Lake Grove Newfield, which, like us, was a town club. They'd had some. It again was run a little bit differently. The demographics were a little bit differently. They had some success. On the regional stage and the national stage as well in their world. We certainly had good numbers. We play out Stony Brook University, so we had a great campus and that there. But we were speaking with them, and they were seeing the same problems as us. That the players were leaving for these hyper clubs younger and younger, and sometimes, Christian, the reasoning wasn't always wasn't always good. Like, we've done a great job with you. You've got to this point. You're potentially going to be sitting in a car for an hour 3 times a week. To and from practice. It's a 2 hour
Mm.
round trip. But again, the fear of missing out, the fear of not getting to a college, or at least trying to get athletic money, because I think that's the other thing that's out there. You've got to play in this club to get seen, to get athletic money, so you can go to a great school.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the big marketing trick out there, which isn't always true. We've had kids leave our club and they go into these other places, and don't get me wrong, some of them do well, but I would say the vast majority end up going to a school or play at a level which is exactly the same as they would have ended up playing if they'd stayed there. But again, it becomes like dominoes, that if one or two of your top kids go, the next three or four go, and all of a sudden in your town team, your teams are really starting to struggle. So the idea was, with LGM, we merged and become Stony Brook-LGN Soccer Club. And I sort of then took the role of the girls director of coaching, because our club really doubled overnight. We went from 450 kids up to about 800. Um, and for somebody to look after 50 or 60 plus teams is nigh impossible. So we changed the structure of the club, we merged. And ironically, our numbers have really grown. And we're seeing a lot of town teams around us are having the same problems that we were seeing 2 or 3 years ago. So that was, I think, a really smart move by the clubs, by the board, to just create a bigger entity. We're not considered a hyper club, not yet anyway. We'd like to aspire to get into these higher level leagues and programs, but we have a little bit of work to do here and there. But we do have, a good core of coaches, a great core of kids, and we're still very appealing to our community. So, we've been happy with what we've done, but like always, always find something better, right?
Of course. So off the back of that, and obviously there's lots that I wanna follow up on. There's lots I want to dig into, but the first is always sort of my uh, confusion, should I say, with soccer. Like let's just take it back to when we were kids, right? We grew up in Harlow, played in the Harlow District League. There was district, county football, whatever, but it was all pretty much regionalised, right? And then you go through the system, you get an academy or you don't. You play adults football. If you get into non-league, you join the pyramid. Like it's all pretty structured. Um, with my American friends or like soccer, even baseball or other sports, there just seems to be like a real mismatch of associations, and you've touched on it a bit about it now. Like then you get travel teams and money teams, and like it just becomes. I find it really confusing. So, talk to me about how your league, your sort of team plays in, and what's the affiliation, and how that pyramid works, I suppose, for a child in your club.
Yeah, I think so for us, we play under at the moment the US Youth Soccer banner, and I think US Youth Soccer is still probably the biggest one. So again, kids will come into our club. We train 3 times a week. Generally, certainly our top teams do, and the plan is for us right now, you play in your local league, like your Long Island Junior Soccer League or your New York Club Soccer League. They did merge. I think they saw it as well. They merged about two or 3 years ago. So even though they're separate leagues, they're all under one governing body. If you do well in there, you play in what's called the North Atlantic National League. So again, that's like a regional league which really encompasses New York mainly, a little bit of Connecticut, maybe a little bit of Jersey. So we generally have our teams in there. We did have our girls program join the National Academy League, which is a little bit further afield. That's definitely trips into New Jersey and trips into Connecticut. That's like a tri-state league. And the idea from there is to finish top two. If you win a state cup as well, and the state cup used to be a great competition, used to have dozens and dozens of teams in. It's not where it used to be, but it certainly carries a little bit of prestige. It's still a nice one to win. And if you win that, then you qualify for like regional events. I've been down to West Virginia. I've been to Virginia sometime. There was actually one in Jersey a couple of years ago, which was very easy to get to for sure. And if you qualify out of that, then you qualify for a national final in Florida. So you have to go through, Christian, probably about 4 or 5 events to get to the big dance, so to speak.
Right.
Now, again, a lot of this, and I'm sure you'll coming from England, everything's tight, everything's close. You think when we used to play in the Harlow Rec League, you used to
Yeah.
get great games every single week. Spartak, uh, Sports Centre, you had Harlow Town Juniors, and there was some good little clubs in there, right? We had some good teams and good players, but everything was within the town. You think the quality
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
had there, we're driving. Again, you're talking 5, 6 hour round trips to play a game of soccer. But we're in that league. The team that's 2 miles down the road, they're in another league, and the team 2 miles from them is in a different league, and we never ever play each other. And when we talk about the development, the problems, the how we can do things better to help the kids, I think that's a big part of it, Christian. We're missing the games that are on our doorstep. And those kids are doing the same as well to play games much further afield and probably getting the same quality match. But nevertheless, in US youth soccer, the pinnacle is to get to national finals, do well there, and you win a national championship. As a
It's
club,
a lot, isn't
what's
it? It's a lot.
yeah, and I think of the expense for the parents, right? You
Yeah.
think of that, we do some calculations, you pay the registration with us, you have a coach 3 times a week, you have a game, sometimes 2 games a weekend. You go to tournaments, and especially as you get older, you have to get to those events to get in front of college coaches. So you're looking, some parents, I mean, we're on the lower side of the costs, so I think we don't do a bad job with it. But some parents, they're traveling out to Seattle, they're going to California, they're off to Texas, Vegas, and they're not just doing it for 1 year, they're doing it for 4 or 5 years on the spin. And when you're doing it as a family, you start thinking, you start adding that up, and is the value really there? Yeah, and that
Yeah,
that to me is where there's a problem,
I've read some great articles to your point on travel teams, not just for soccer, right? For baseball and like to your point, if you're doing that as a family, the argument is you could just actually save that money, just just give it to your kid for their education anyway. That's going to pay for their schooling anyway, right? It becomes a lot of money. Is it, as I say, I always ask the question in the US, is there was a very strong article and a lot of press from Ibrahimovic. He finished his career in the US. I think he lives in LA now. His boys are part of, I don't know whether they're part of LAFC or at the Galaxy, but he was speaking about how American sport, especially soccer, has become a bit of a rich person sport. Is that the case in New York? Is like for kids, for instance, that maybe don't come from affluent families, that are they being blocked to progress in the game? Because as I say, over here, really, you can still pretty much get like anyone can go and join a Sunday morning team in England still and get spotted and then work their way into the academy system and go on from there, right? What's the case in in New York or Long Island in regards to the expense of soccer?
Yeah, again, it was a great question, and again, it was always a for us, wasn't it? It was always called the traditionally the working class
Yeah,
game,
hundred
right?
percent,
Cheap,
100%.
easy, slice of orange at half time, maybe a trip to Clacton once a year.
Yeah,
Here it's definitely a middle class sport. So yes, there is. I think again, a net of players that aren't necessarily being able to get into the system because of finances. Now, I think a lot of MLS clubs and on the girls' side, they do recognise there's probably a market there which everybody's missing. And how do we get to those kids and give them the same opportunities? And I think that's sometimes what American sports is not. It's not even sports, Christian. You think even education, right? If you go to a school in this district which isn't that good, is that kid going to get the teaching that they need, the support that
sure.
they need, the education they need? They could be the next Bill Gates, but they're going to get held back because their school budgets are a lot smaller than maybe a kid that's in this area who's going to get all the advantages and all the extra teaching, etc. So I do think that's a big American thing, and again a big business thing. And how do you capture those players? Now, that said, us as a club, and I do know other clubs do this, we have X amount of scholarships we can give out through the year.
Right,
Um,
that's good.
Now it is a business, right? So we're not we got bills to pay and stuff like that, no question. But again, we do feel that we try to encourage people from maybe those backgrounds. Look, you come here, we will find a home for you. But there's obviously only so much we can do there. Now there is community programs, church youth organizations. There is like intramural soccer where you don't have a paid trainer. Maybe it's a mum and dad that runs it. So everybody can play. But as I said, Christian, you get to that point where if you join a team where you've got to do $20,000 worth of traveling for the next 3 years, because that's what
Yeah,
that's a mandatory thing. That 60,000, that could be at the cost of you going to college for the 4 years afterwards. So do you invest that 60,000 in getting better educated because there's more money in academics, or do you follow your
mm,
soccer dream? So these are questions parents have to ask, every single year.
yeah, and so that's a tough one, right? But touched on it then, and America's not the only sort of country that does it, but comparison is in the UK, your son becomes an under seven. Normally, the bloke who's played the most gets pushed into it, or the parent that puts their hand up coaches. Right now, we know obviously that's different in the US. But let's explain to the listeners. So in the US, you come to your club or any other club, the coaches there are paid. Some of them that's their full time job, like that was your job, and so parents are contributing to salaries, and so the cost there are, if you think, let's just say in England it's 100, £200 for the season, like I suppose in the US it's £1,000 or £2,000 a year to pay, and that pays salaries, right? Because everyone there is, not only are they paid, but they're paid because obviously as well they're they have the right qualifications as well. Do you just want to explain how that works, Nashy, please, for the people that might not know?
Yes, totally. So you're right. So you get like we'll set a budget for the so let's say it's $2,500. So what does
Yeah,
that cover? That covers your trainer or your coach, really. Some clubs do trainers, but it covers your coach for 3 sessions a week, covers your coach for a game, and again, registrations, insurances, fields, lights, all the things that we have. If the equipment, the goals get tipped over, something like that. So that's say generally give or take where most clubs are. Now, this is where it to me it gets a little dicey. That as somebody who's and I try to say this to parents, where's a lot of money, it's this, but you're getting someone who's qualified, someone who's been in the game for 20 plus years, some as a coach, someone who's a college coach and is very well connected. That's and hopefully a good person and a decent coach. That's what your money gets. Where it gets a little bit disjointed is anyone can do that, Christian. Like you can set up tomorrow. Maybe you've not really coached in a game, but you might
right.
have charisma. Maybe you've got a group, and this is the battle we have, and we've seen it not just in our club, but other clubs where a dad maybe gets a little team in our intramural programs, 5 or 6 year olds,
Yeah,
and builds this little dynasty, winning these games where they're shooting into pug goals. And now he comes to travel, but he doesn't want to let go. So what he
yeah,
does is say, well, I'm not going to stay in the club because I want to be the coach of this group of 10 boys. I'm going to go somewhere else and set up my own team. And I've got friends here. And that parent might be with them kids for the next 5 or 6 years. Now, it is
right.
about fun. It is about being with your friends, and it might work for those kids. But in that group, Christian, there might be one or two of them who could have gone on and done really great things. And it's not a knock on the parent because he's given his time, he's given his, but there's again that always the argument of, we've got really good qualified people here, but anybody, and it might not be a dad, it might just be somebody who looks online and says, hey, I'm going to become a guy that sets up tournaments, or I'm going to set up camps, and I'm going to charge people this and get college coaches. So there's not that oversight that I think there should be. In our club, we try to make sure, has everyone got is everybody licensed? Yes. Has everybody coached at this age group? So we try and put a lot of layers in to make sure that the product we put on the field or what we do as coaches is good. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it does come to people paying money, but I don't know if there's enough information out there about what they should be getting. And there's so many of these little entities, these little clubs, and that then anybody can set up. And again, I think this is clouding the waters a lot.
What what do you see the future of American soccer, Nash? Do you think with the added money coming in for the next World Cup, do you think there'll be more confusion, or do you think there's a way? Obviously, there's lots of conversations about the USL and various leagues in America sort of merging together, and promotion and relegation rather than, as you know, right now it's just a franchise system. Anyone can buy a franchise, pop a team up, and off you go. Like, how do you see the future of American soccer?
So there's when Japan got the World Cup in 2002, Japan and Korea, they got awarded that in 1990. And the Japanese sat down, I think they sat down with the Brazilian FA and probably a couple of others. But when we talk about businesses and that, everything's like a 5 year plan, right? What's your 5 year plan? What's your 10 year plan? The Japanese had a 100-year plan in 1990 saying, we're going to get this World Cup in '02. What do we want to put in place? So the first thing was to pop up a pro league. That's what I think where Gary Lineker went. I think that's where Wenger
Yeah.
went. Let's start with a pro league there, right? We'll get it on the men's side. We'll get it on the women's side. What was the other things? Well, to have on a regular basis Japanese players playing in Europe and our men's team on a regular basis get into the last 16 and the last 8 at every World Cup. On the women's side, I mean, they're already ahead of schedule on the women's side because they won a World Cup. I think it was maybe 2014. I think they beat the US in the final. And everything, Christian, they do is exactly the same. And you look at players now that are coming out of Japan. There's some really good talent there. So I think they did it right. And pretty much the blueprint for creating a typical Japanese player, technical, both feet, good athletically, they're very, very good. They all sat down and done that. And again, I think the US does need that circuit breaker. I do think, and I guess this is the big struggle in the Premier League and the advent of let's create a European Super League, right? Loads of American owners are coming in to make an NFL type model. And I know that's the big struggle going on over there. Now, I think they do it with MLS because, like you said, you have to buy a franchise. They've to quite a big extent done it in youth soccer. Where I think it should go is back towards a promotion relegation, like I told you in that Northeast Regional Premier and Long Island Junior that we used to work through. Failing that, then the leagues that they've got at the moment, I think for the development of this game here, they have to open up a promotion relegation. It shouldn't be about how much money that the club has got or how much who they're connected with, or it should be more about here. You're here on merit now. You've done this because you've achieved A, B, and C. I do think that circuit breaker is not too far away. I think everybody around the table is saying, how many American players have we got playing at the top level in other areas of the world? We haven't, Pulisic maybe, you got Joe Scally's over in Germany, but there's not the guy at Fulham, but there's not this big groundswell, given the money that goes into the game here, of loads and loads of kids playing it in Europe and getting pulled over there because the talent level is near an Argentina or near a Brazil or near a Holland or a Spain or something like that. I think with the amount of money we spend here, we should be able to produce more players. I do think that realization is coming. So hopefully the big wigs get around the table. The World Cup, I think, is a good place that can happen, or just after it, and say, right, we're going to consolidate on the men's and the women's side. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to have this true pathway and keep the money in the game. That's why I think it will go, Christian. That's why I hope it goes. But as I said, this thing is always evolving and always changing, and personnel is really important.
Yeah, so that's kind of my follow on because, as I say, the two countries that I went to play football and be involved in football was the US and Australia, right? And I've always looked at them league sort of as, without being rude, like your last stop before your retirement, right? So
Yes.
you go like let's take Steven Gerrard, right? He's had his whole career at Liverpool. He doesn't want to drop down to the Championship. He don't want to go to another Premier League team. If he drops down to the Championship, he's got 50 games a season. Like every game, people are knocking the crap out of him. You can go to them and let's play 20 games a season in the sun, get maybe your 8-10 millions, whatever it is, right? But you take away sort of the designated players or off the roster players or whatever you want to call them. How was like the MLS, and I use that league as an example, the A League in Australia. How are you getting to keep those kids in the country rather than losing all your best talent at 18, 20 to Europe? Like, do you ever see that changing, or do you just think that's part and parcel of playing soccer in America, that once sort of kids reach an age where they're on people's radars, they always want to leave to go and play in Europe or whatever? Can you ever see that changing? That's if you can or you can't, like what needs to change to be able to do that?
So the MLS clubs, like they have like a limited budget, right?
Yeah,
So every that, and if you're coming into the MLS as a really young player, and I'm going back a few years ago, I did a bit of work with the New York Red Bulls, and I went to their academies, and they were talking, again, about the similar sort of problems that they're still there today. Like if you're an 18-year-old boy and you get a choice. Hey, listen, you can go and play your soccer at Duke, or you can go somewhere. You're going to get a full ride to play soccer, come out with a world-class education. You're going to go on and be a doctor, a dentist, something really high level where you're going to be earning anything between quarter of a million to 750,000 a year straight off the bat. Or
mm,
do you want to become a footballer? Start in the MLS at about 18,000 a year, and we're going to house you with six or seven other players.
yeah,
And what would you do? I think, Christian, we know, and then anyone who's listening to this will say, "Well, I'll take the first option." So a highly talented kid, until we say to them, hey, we're going to give you a contract for 4 years and it's worth 40, 50, $60,000 a week,
mm,
maybe. Um, that until that happens, I think that potentially is always going to drain the talent. So whether these kids get pulled early to get over to Europe and to those areas, but for the MLS, I think they need to get rid of the wage structure and give the ownership. The MLS has done really well. It's evolved so much.
yeah, massively, yeah,
They put all these stop gaps in place to stop the boom and bust, like when the New York Cosmos.
yeah,
That's what happened there, right? Look at we got the NASL. It's a great league. You had at the time, like you said, even though the players at the end of that career they were still coming over in droves, being paid horrendous amounts of money, but they're playing to 5,000 people in a 90,000 seat stadium. The math doesn't work.
yeah. I
So
remember in 2001, like it was the Miami Fusion, like that was the team locally for us, and Bishop and stuff had come over. But yeah, if you look at the MLS now, like there's new teams every year. Like I used to go quite a lot to the Sounders in Seattle when I was working there, and like it has massively evolved, but it's just trying to keep that talent, right? Just trying to keep the kids that are good at 18, 20, 21 actually playing in the league and making the league stronger rather than, moving to Europe. Like I know they have the salary cap and obviously a wage restriction that you have to go to. Is I remember reading one like the rookie contract in the MLS used to be like 20 grand. Is that like still the case as well? Obviously, that's a bit of a hindrance.
yeah, it might have changed, Christian. Like I said, I mean, this is when I went. This was pre-COVID that I got invited to this Red Bull seminar when we were down at
Right.
a convention in Philadelphia, and it was so interesting. And it was like, look, here are our challenges, and it was the whole thing about the young players was like it costs us 10 million a year to run our academy. So
Yeah.
unless we're selling players and making money, that's 10 million we have to account for every year. But and that was the example that he gave of running into those problems of we want to develop that next player that we can sell for a profit and reinvest. But even if the money comes in, we still have a salary cap. And that's when Thierry Henry was sort of playing there as well. So what he had there's obviously deals coming in, but yeah, it is a problem for them here. And I know if they get the wage cap off, I think America could become a really big player in this because when you look how many American owners are in the Premier League, um, I'm sure they'd rather invest it in their own backyard, but they want the freedom, a little bit like Saudi Arabia, to go out and try to get the top talent. And these guys, again, they look in terms of 5, 10, 20 years. And if you honestly, Christian, we're up here in New York, the amount of Miami shirts that I
Yeah.
see
Yeah. Yeah.
on the
Ridiculous.
field with Messi on the back, most teams have got 5 or 6 kids just in our club alone. So again, you start multiplying that, you can see the commercial side of it would be huge here.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I've never seen so many like American soccer shirts since Messi joined. like Inter Miami. Like both my kids have got Inter Miami kits. Like, and they've actually got numerous Inter Miami kits. Like, obviously, greatest player in the world, and he's drew other people to that club. But as I say, I just think, as you say, it's got massive potential in the American League. Obviously, it's so vast. Um, but yeah, I just always feel the problem will be, keeping those players in the country and not, over to US, and rather than, it being a stopgap at the end of your career, seeing out your career in the sun, making it somewhere where, as you say, people wanna come and play. So where you are then, Nash, is that the nearest club to you? So you've got the Rough Riders, you've got the Long Island Rough Riders in the USL, but MLS team, I suppose, is that the Red Bulls to you?
Um, the Red Bulls is over in Jersey, so the nearest one for us is New York City Football Club, which play out the
Right.
Bronx, which is Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Again, there's a lot of talk about them opening an arena in Queens, which is an old racetrack. I think that will do very well there. The Bronx is tough. It's just a tough place to get to.
Yeah.
Um, and again, when you've got a night game, and it's at the end of the day, it's a baseball stadium, so it hasn't got the same feel as like a
So is that
soccer.
in
But
the
it's like,
old is that in the old Yankee Stadium, Nash? Because I went New York maybe last summer or the summer before. I went to the Yankees' new stadium,
yeah.
compared to the one that was at. So is that soccer club playing in the old in the old Bronx Stadium, the old baseball stadium, or is this completely different?
No, they're in the new stadium.
Oh, they're in
So
the new
obviously,
one, are they? Okay.
yeah, they're in there, but it's like really weird. It's like, again, the field size is, in my opinion, again, just doesn't look right in
It's
in
not, no.
in the stadium. It looks really, really small, and when you watch it on the telly, you sort of see the gap between like the corner flag and the halfway line, and it just makes me laugh. So I thought that sort of thing would turn up on a Sunday morning and see a pitch marked out. You're like, listen,
Yeah.
it was less running for us, but yeah, it's not purpose built for that. Now, New York City Football Club is owned by the City Group, which is obviously involved with Manchester City. And again, they've done some things here. I went on a seminar with them a few years ago about what they're looking to do, how they're looking to grow the game here, grow their presence. And again, really, really interesting stuff. But the big thing for them is they know if they get that stadium in Queens, 20,000 stadium, the shovel went in the ground a few months ago, so they're starting to build that now, and I think that will become New York's club. The Red Bulls are out in Jersey, and it's a pain to get there and back. It's 2 or 3 hours away. Queens to me is an hour, and we've got a huge population on Long Island. I think that place will sell out most weeks.
So New York City, that's where Lampard went, right? And it was where what's
Vieira.
his name? Yeah, and the boy who got released academy wise went to college in the US. Is he at Leeds now or
Oh,
somewhere? The left winger.
Jack Harrison.
That's where he played. Is that where he
That's
first come
correct.
through? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Well, he
Yeah, they
he was
they always played at that base, but yeah, it just looks a bit, just don't look right, does it? As you say, teams need their own spaces. As I say, the same as the A League in Australia. Once you've got your own ground and your own stadium and it's proper, for soccer only, then I think, it'll continue to rise. As a club, do you get out there, Nashy? Do they give tickets to junior sort of clubs in the area? Do you get out to any games?
Yeah, I mean, we used to have a good affiliation with I said with the Red Bulls. So we went to a few games out there. We took 400, 500 people from our club on a couple of times out there, which was great. It took a lot of organising, as you can probably imagine. Again, the only thing is, because it was so far away. Well, it was the closest professional team at the time before NYCFC established itself.
Yeah,
It just was tough to go and watch. And look, the Rough Riders again. I definitely got to a few of them games. The Cosmos, when they kicked off there, because they've relaunched a few times as well.
yeah.
I've been to a few of their games, but again, the level, and they're planning out athletic stadiums and things like that. So it all feels a little bit broken and borrowed. The good thing I think now with soccer here, and the pro clubs are finally, they know that they're self-sufficient and that they can, like NYCFC. they're planning Yankee Stadium. It makes sense at the time. They're a new club. They're trying to establish themselves. But now that they probably look at it and say, well, we can basically finance ourselves, and we got the City Group behind us, and we're now ready to spread our wings. So I think, I mean, once that stadium goes up, it will certainly be a place I'm going to go and watch a lot more professional games. And as I said, if they get that salary cap off, I think the sky is the limit.
So, as we look to wrap up, mate, you obviously a Harlow lad, always loved Arsenal. You was over at Christmas. As I say, I see you at a Harlow game. Did you get to watch Arsenal when you was back? Did you line up any more games?
I got to see. I got to see the Arsenal Ipswich,
Yeah,
so got to see that, and yeah, I actually went and watched a couple of Harlow games for old time's sake, which was again, it's amazing how it goes full circle, Christian. Like I said,
yeah, yeah,
it does. You realise it did play a big part in your life, like growing up, whether it be playing on the youth teams. Obviously, we all went and watched games there up on the old ski slope or next to the ski
yeah,
slope. But yeah, it's great to see where Harlow. I know they've had a bit of a rough go of it the last couple of
yeah,
years, but I think everybody who lived in town always said, didn't they? Why has that club never taken that
yeah.
big step? And you in a town of 100,000 people, but I see that there's decent crowds there. It's a nice little ground, and it'd be nice to see them push towards like the towards like tier 5, tier 6 again, and hopefully one day we'll have a team that gets in the football league, right?
No, I'd love, mate. As I say, I don't. I've never quite understood it. I think at times it's been on the verge of big things, but for one reason or another, it's not quite got there. But yeah, hopefully, as I say, if they can get out of the league that they're in this year, back into the Essex Senior League, and sort of like on the road back to some sort of decent football, because unfortunately, that they've got a good team, Harlow. They've got some experienced boys in there. I love the ground. I love the club. Tom's a great bloke, but unfortunately, the league they're in at the minute is pretty poor. And they need to get out of it really and get back on the road to sort of decent standard football within the pyramid. Being in the being in the US so long, how much do you still keep an eye on? Like, obviously, you got your Arsenal and your Harlow, but how much do you keep an eye on sort of like football over here in general?
Well, the great thing is here, because of the broadcasting deal NBC have got
Yeah,
with the Premier League. I get, ironically enough, when I'm over in England, it's bloody hard to sometimes watch a game. Over here, like
you
every
get
game is
everything.
on,
Yeah,
everything. So there's fun enough. There's like a little Arsenal pub down on the South Shore. I get down there sometimes, and this is the generation of fan that's here now. So a lot of those guys, and they get normally about 50, 60 a game. They try to make it as lively as possible. They're singing the songs in an American accent, but not many of them have ever been to Arsenal or to Highbury.
sure.
And it's the same with Liverpool, Spurs, United. There's all these little niche places popping up. So again, there's an interest there. There's a Premier League there that is actively followed here. Again, you look at the deals the Premier League are making, and again, it goes back to this: when you look at the ownership in the Premier League, this is where they're trying to, I think, again, get a big interest from the American market. So I keep up with it. I must admit, Christian, I do enjoy, even like people like yourself, and I keep in touch with a lot of the guys that I played with or knew growing up. And it's funny watching their little journeys and that as well with their kids, or if they've got involved in coaching. And I've always enjoyed that grassroots connection. And as I said, like everything, it's bigger, it's better, do it this way. But sometimes we do neglect where we come from, what we grew up with, which wasn't very much. It was a field, a couple of goals. And again, when you look at the talent that got produced in Harlow for a long time, I think we have to find a way, and that includes here, to go that very organic, let the kids play approach. And I'll just share this with you quickly what I mean by that. I set a thing up over in our club, and just said, right, I'm going to set up 2 goals. I'm going to put a bag of pennies down and I'm going to invite kids from, I don't know, like 9 to 13 or 14 years of age. And I'm just going to step back and say, off you go. Sort yourself out into teams. Do the and honestly, Christian, I did not say a word to them. They turned up, went, yeah, the goals are there, pennies are there. And they're all looking at each other about 5 or 10 minutes. And then a couple of kids, well, oh, I'll be this team, I'll be that team. And the kids, there's about 14, had a really, really good game. They're just kicking it around. The older kids are helping the younger kids. They had a young kid there who was about 7. He was someone's brother. If you score, your goal counts as 2. So I thought, great, what a this can grow from here. I got 3 or 4 complaints afterwards. It was disorganized. There was no adult supervision. You had big kids with little kids. And it was such a shame because that's what the kids need more of. You know, ask Gary, my brother. I think he become at least better than I was, which wasn't hard, but he could become better because growing up, Christian, as 4.5 years younger, he played with his older brother and his friends. So when he played on age, he knew how to ride a tackle. He knew how to play against a bigger kid.
Yeah, we
And I think
played down Hare
now with
Street Fields, mate.
you know, don't you play with Scotty Bailey and
Yeah.
Kev and Kev Eagles and you know there was and we would just play the game. And if there was a way we could find a way to get back to doing more of that and saying it's okay, you know, that's playing. It doesn't have to be in a uniform. It doesn't have to be. It can be alongside that, but it doesn't have to be this really tight structure all the time because the
Yeah,
kids come out with the best ideas, right?
yeah, and that's like I think some of that comes back to like kids don't play out anymore, so there's no
That's
like sort
true.
of
Yeah.
pickup games or there's no go games in the street. But like for me, like my boy, we just had half term like 3 or 4 times in the holidays. Like him and his mates, they're not going down like field so much anymore. But like we don't live too far in Leon C. We don't live too far away from like a goals facility where they've got loads of 5-a-side pitches. So him and his mates will like hire a pitch or pay the £6 each to go and play down there, and they'll play for a few hours down there. So and that pleases me that they're just having a kick about. But I just think, yeah, I think there is times have changed, right? And you know the reason why they put down South London produced so many footballers is because they was all having a kick about in a cage for hours. So yeah, my sort of last question, Nashy, before we tie this up, and I really do thank you for your time. I know it's the start of your day over there. Like what do you miss about UK football, and what do you think like you don't miss because the US are doing it better?
I, I miss the ban. That's really silly. I miss the banter, going to the pub,
Yeah,
going to the games. I mean, there's nothing like it. Is there? You're walking up to the stadium, you've got the buzz going on. It just that is so to me that is so underappreciated. And I'll say to anyone, if you're going to a game, like you said, whether it be a Leighton Orient, a Harlow Town, an Arsenal, whatever it may be, just you really appreciate it because I think what we have there is really unique. I've been to football games here. I've been to baseball games here, and you know they do it differently here. They tailgate, you know, people wheeling out barbecues in the parking lot, and it's just so
I
different. And
always feel like America's more like for the experience in it and the food and just like a day out rather than like in England it's kind of it's part of your soul and it's ingrained, it's like tribal, whereas in America it's not really like that, I don't think.
no, their expectation of going to sports is a lot different, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's nothing wrong with that. It is just different, and when you come from our background, um, you know, I think that we sort of see it and go, all right, it seems a bit odd to us, but once you immerse yourself into that culture a bit, you say, yeah, it's great. It's just a different way of prepping and getting to the ground, and just again, provided we finish out, but the I got invited to Man U Arsenal. I got into the corporate side of it. They played at Giant Stadium the other summer, and you know we're up there and we're having a good time, and there, there was no segregation. So you had Man U and Arsenal all
Yeah.
mixed in, and I don't know what happened in the crowd, but all of a sudden there was this huge scuffle going on between about 40 players, so 40 spectators. There's no stewards, no police, nothing. And this thing's going on for minutes of it. And I'm looking down going, if this was in any stadium in Europe, first of all, the stewards are out, aren't they? The police will be in there within 30 seconds. And it was, again, ironic that little bit of naivety of this isn't a sporting event. This is Arsenal v Man U. And I guess there were some people getting a little bit leery. But again, that tribalism in soccer, I don't think you get that. You get that in the other sports quite like you do there. Not condoning the behaviour, obviously, but just sort of seeing it going off. And it was like, how the heck can you have all these people mixed in together, around a game of football? So found that a little odd. In terms of what do we do? What do we do better here? I would say there's a much more emphasis on getting coaching education here. I've been lucky enough to go on to quite a lot of courses. I got to actually do one with Chris Bart-Williams, God rest his soul. I tell you what a great guy. Just the stories about Brian Clough and his time with Forest and Ron Atkinson, but talk about someone who you could have as a mentor there, someone who you could really get to learn off of and you find on these courses that everyone's an equal, Christian, and they want you to do them. It's really encouraging. And yes, there is a cost to them, but there is such an emphasis. Again, I think this is in America, that get yourself educated. It's really held in high regard. And sometimes you do feel, I don't know what it's like there, but it doesn't count for much. Well, I think here, when you get your licensing and that, certainly at the top level of the game here, it's really, really appreciated. And I would like to think that if I was coaching in the UK, and you might know a little bit differently, Christian, because you're there, but you're being told, go and get yourself better. Here's a course for you. This is what you're going to get out of it. We have pros on it. That's what, for me, I've really embraced and enjoyed that side of it. So, even now, as someone who's a lot older than they want to really admit, that I'm still learning. I'm still getting a lot out the game, and long may that continue.
Yeah, I think the only difference in the UK is, or like in Britain, is once you go up the levels, it's like really hard to get on courses. Like lots of my friends that, and even boys that come out the pro game, they have to go to Wales or Ireland or Scotland to get on an A license or a pro license, because you just won't get on it. But yeah, mate, listen, it's been really great to hear sort of your experiences stateside. I think I'll put some contact details on, if you don't mind, of because I get inquiries about the US all the time. I actually helped a friend of ours, like a family friend of ours. She's going to play in, I think, Louisiana maybe, but I looked at colleges for her and gave her some advice. So I'll put your contact details down. I'll put the club where you coach down, and yeah, I hope people enjoy the episode. Nash, I really appreciate your time. I look forward to following your club, and hopefully you've got some big news coming out in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I look forward to catch up again soon, mate. And as I say, next time you're over, I'd be good to catch up.
Yeah, we can have a reunion, right? We'll get out, we'll get some of the old boys together, maybe go down Todd Brook and kick the ball
That's
around
it,
again,
mate.
right?
Doubles Wembley, only headers in the 6-yard box, yeah?
You got it, mate. You got
Nice
it.
one. Take care, mate. Thanks for your
Good
time.
stuff, Christian. Take
Cheers,
care.
pal. See you later, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.